Welcome, dear friends. Pull up a seat, grab a warm beverage, and join me for the Aspiring Author's Diary. Today, I wanted to talk with you all about self-doubt and competition. And this came to mind for me this week because I went to this beautiful book fair. It was so much fun. It was fall themed, so it had spooky books, and it was at this farm with these, the perfect little cinnamon donuts and cider and all kinds of great stuff. So it was so much fun. But when I was there and browsing through all these books, looking at the cover, looking at the descriptions, I started to feel a little bit of self-doubt. I started to feel like, will my book ever be among these books? Will I ever be a peer to these authors? And I was comparing myself to them and their work. And it made me think of that quote that is often attributed to Teddy Roosevelt, saying that comparison is the thief of joy. And in a lot of ways, that's true. When we compare ourselves with others, we often are judging ourselves and others. We're judging them, perhaps judging them to be good, and judging ourselves to be not as good as them. And this self-doubt can sometimes, decrease our motivation, make us feel like, what's the point? And I think that a lot of writers feel that way. Whether it's at the end of the process or maybe they've been rejected from, being from an agent or from being published. But I think there is also another way to think about comparison and to think about competition. So I mentioned last week about this great book I'm reading called Success is for You by Dr. David R. Hawkins. And in this book, he talks about the idea that there really is no such thing as competition. Really, there's only inspiration. So it's kind of flipping it on its head, flipping the concept on its head. Oftentimes we think about, well, it's going to be me, versus them trying to get someone to buy my book versus their book, or trying to get the publishing company to publish me instead of them. Or even like in restaurants, right? Trying to get enough people seated at my restaurant versus the one down the street. But what this book was saying is that really, if we change our perspective, that rather than competitors, rather than, these are obstacles which we have to fight against, we can view them as sources of inspiration. A lot of great athletes and other greats in other fields have used competition and rivalry to, sharpen their skills against each other. They used it as motivation to become better and better and better. Two such people I think about is Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal. They're two tennis players who really over years of rivalry, and a rivalry that's pretty courteous between them, pretty civil, they have both improved a lot. And who knows how good they would have been if they didn't have each other to compete against. I think of running a marathon, and in running a marathon, oftentimes you have a pacer. You have somebody to, kind of keep pace with, make sure that you're keeping up. make sure that you're at the place where you want to be. And so you can view a competitor as a pacer in a way, a source of inspiration to get your butt moving so you don't fall behind, to sharpen your sword against. Another example that comes to mind is for those of you who like to watch anime, Naruto and Sasuke, right? Two people really clashing, but whose competition, supported them getting better and better. And it's not just competition between two people, but I want to read a quote from this book about resistance. So it says, resistance is not something to overcome. It is to be included, capitalized on, and used as a springboard. So the specific example that he gives is Roger Bannister, who was he was the first person to break the 4-minute mile, to run a mile in under 4 minutes. And before that, it was thought impossible. It was thought that it wasn't literally humanly possible to do that. But rather than using that 4-minute mile as a barrier, as something you can't break through, he used it as a springboard. He used it as a goal. And once he broke through, after him, person after person was able to follow suit. And now the world records for the mile is well below 4 minutes. But because he was able to break through that barrier, other people were able to as well. So as we think about competition and success, last week we talked a little bit about excellence, and one of the aspects of excellence being right intention. So another thing that this book says is changing our perspective from success means that there's going to be winners and losers. Changing our perspective to success, especially when there's right intention behind it, when we're doing something for the goodwill of the consumer, success actually creates winners, winners, and winners. When we're successful, when we have a good intention for the consumer, they're successful. And when we're successful and our competition uses us as inspiration, then they become successful as well. And we all benefit. So as I go into my week, I think about how self-doubt is not an accurate view of ourselves and our work. When we feel self-doubt, it doesn't necessarily mean that there's something new wrong with our work, wrong with the direction that we're going. We can definitely use it and pay attention if it feels like something we're doing is not the right direction or not the right, story plot. But it doesn't have an accurate reflection on our work. It's not the same thing as getting back a, unbiased review of what we wrote. So in some ways, when you feel self-doubt, just don't believe it. It's a feeling. It comes, it goes, and it'll go again, it'll come again. But we don't have to throw it all in the garbage because we feel like it's not so great at the moment. In fact, when we do feel that way, instead of resistance stopping us, we can use it as a springboard, as a way to leap past that into something even greater. And then this week, I want to look at my competitors. So, look at the people who are also working at publishing their own books. Those, writers who are out there doing the best they can to get their work published, as well as writers who have published books. Seeing what they did right, seeing, using them as inspiration, basically, for my own journey, and learning from them. And then really leaning into the idea that, when we see our competition as inspiration, and when we have right intention for our consumers, when we try to produce the best thing possible for them, there's only winners. There's no winners and losers. So I'm so glad you joined me for this journey, and I can't wait to find out where we end up. See y'all next week.